Imagine you're in the middle of this huge battle, right? Enemies are all over and swords clashing.
Yeah.
It's like the fate of the world's at stake. But you're not all weighed down with armor.
Right.
Or heavy weapons. You can move so gracefully, like a martial arts master. You're dodging blows and then you strike with total accuracy.
Yeah.
And then you can channel this mystical energy to do these amazing feats.
Right.
That's like the power of the monk.
Yeah.
And we're going like deep into that today. What makes it so cool in D&D?
Oh, I totally get why people love it. Just the other night, my monk character was fighting this big ogre in our campaign, and it was a really bad situation. The ogre was going to crush our healer, but I used Step of the Wind to get across the whole battlefield.
Wow.
I wove between its legs, and then I landed a stunning strike right on its jaw.
Oh, wow.
And the ogre was stunned, so it gave our party the opening we needed to totally turn things around.
That's incredible.
It was really close.
So you have a real knack for pulling off those moves.
Well, I've had some practice, but it really shows how the monk can change the game, especially in those moments. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're doing a deep dive into the monk class.
Okay.
And we're using this really great article from LitRPG Reads called Understanding the Monk Character Class and D&D Strengths and Weaknesses by Ken Chan.
So if you're listening and you're thinking of trying monk for the first time, or maybe you've played one before, but you want some new ideas, this is for you.
Totally. And what I think makes this article so good is that it doesn't just stay on the surface.
Right.
It really goes deep into the details about the monk.
Yeah.
It looks at their good parts, but also the things they're not so good at.
Right.
And how those not so good things can actually make for some cool strategies in role-playing.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What makes the monk stand out from other D&D classes?
Okay, well, one of the things you notice right away is how much they use dexterity and wisdom. So unlike fighters with their heavy armor, who need strength and steel, monks go for being agile and quick and having mental discipline. They have this really awesome ability called unarmored defense, which means their armor class is based on their dexterity and wisdom scores. So they can move really fast and smoothly without needing heavy armor.
So it's not just about being strong. It's about being smart, too.
Yeah.
You have to be quick thinking and able to see what their opponent's going to do.
Exactly. And that mix of physical and mental strength is what makes them so adaptable. They're not just about doing damage, they're also super mobile. They can dodge really well, and they can mess up enemy formations with their special moves.
So it's not just about hitting hard.
Right.
It's about being in control of the fight.
Yeah.
Creating chaos and making their enemies lose their balance.
Exactly. And a lot of that control comes from how they can use ki.
Okay.
It's this mystical energy they can channel to do all kinds of crazy things.
Let's talk about Kiri. It sounds like something from a martial arts movie.
It kind of is. Key points are limited,
right?
But they let monks do stuff that other classes can't. They can use ki to boost their movement with Step of the Wind.
Yeah.
So they can run across the battlefield, jump over things, and even run on walls.
So they're not just quick, they can be all over the place.
Yeah, they're really hard to hit.
Wow.
And then there's Flurry of Blows.
Yeah.
With this, they can attack super fast, like a bunch of hits in a row.
Wow.
So it's like they're overwhelming their opponents with all these attacks.
So they're like this whirlwind of destruction.
Yeah.
And what about Stunning Strike? You talked about that before?
Oh, Stunning Strike. That one's a total game changer. They spend a ki point.
Yeah.
And they can try to stun their opponent. It's like they paralyze them for a short time.
Wow.
This can totally change a battle because it gives the monk's allies a chance to get ready again.
Yeah.
Or do their own powerful attacks.
So it's not just about the damage you do.
Right.
It's about controlling how the fight goes.
Yeah.
Stopping the enemy's plans and giving your team a chance.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that these Kate abilities aren't just about raw power.
Right.
You have to be strategic and know how to manage your resources, which adds another level of complexity.
Yeah, it's like a game within a game.
Yeah.
You have to think about your key points all the time.
Right.
Making sure you have enough to do those special moves when you really need them.
Exactly. And that's what makes monks so fun to play. It's not just about swinging a sword or casting a spell.
Right.
It's about mastering a unique set of skills and then using them in a smart way to overcome any challenge.
So we know that monks are super mobile, they hit really hard, and they have these key abilities that let them control the fight in cool ways. But what about their role in combat in general? How do they compare to other classes like fighters or barbarians?
Oh, I think the big difference is that monks aren't about just raw strength. It's all about precision timing and finding your opponent's weak spots. It's like a martial arts master who can move around a bigger, stronger opponent,
Right.
hitting them in the right places and avoiding their attacks.
So it's less about wearing down the enemy with brute force
Yeah.
and more about finding those openings and taking advantage of them.
Exactly. And being able to move around so well is a big part of this.
Yeah.
They can use step of the wind to get to better positions,
Right.
go around their enemies and do surprise attacks.
So they're not just reacting to what the enemy does.
Yeah.
They're deciding how the fight's going to go, controlling the pace and keeping their opponents guessing.
Exactly. And the fact that they can stun enemies with stunning strike adds another level of strategy.
Right.
They can pick a really important enemy like a spellcaster or a tough warrior
Yeah.
and take them out of the fight for a little while, which gives their allies a big advantage.
So they can really mess up the enemy's plans and turn the battle around.
Totally. And that makes them really valuable when you're playing with a group. They can be damage dealers and tactical controllers depending on what's going on. And that's one of the things that makes monks so appealing, I think.
Yeah.
To players who like that more tactical combat.
Hmm.
It's not just swinging a weapon and hoping for the best.
Right.
You're thinking about your moves.
Yeah.
You're figuring out what your enemy's going to do.
Yeah.
And you're using those special skills to get an advantage.
So for people like me who love to plan and outsmart their opponents, the monk is a really fun class to play.
Totally. And it's not just about fighting. The article also talks about how monks are really useful when you're exploring or in social situations too because of those unique skills.
Let's talk about exploration. I can see how a character who can run on walls
Right.
and jump over obstacles and move super fast would be great for getting through tricky dungeons.
Yeah.
Or exploring new places.
You're right. Their step of the wind lets them handle tough terrain easily. They can climb cliffs, cross big gaps, and get through thick forests like it's nothing.
So while everyone else is struggling to climb a wall, the monk's already at the top checking out what's ahead.
Exactly. And because they're so agile, they're less likely to set off traps or fall into danger.
Right.
They can get through tight spaces, balance on narrow edges, and even slow themselves down if they fall.
Wow.
Thanks to slow fall.
So they're like the ultimate adventurers.
Yeah.
Always ahead and ready for anything.
Exactly. And it's not just physical challenges, they're also really good in social situations,
That's surprising.
which might surprise people who think monks are just quiet warriors who like to be alone.
Yeah, I always thought of them as more focused on meditation and self-discipline,
Yeah.
not really interacting with the world that much.
Well, that's a common idea, but it's not the whole story.
Right.
Remember, monks are all about balance.
Right.
They want harmony, not just within themselves, but also with other people.
Okay.
Their training often involves learning persuasion, insight, and even deception,
Really?
depending on the path they choose.
So they could be really smooth talkers,
Yeah.
able to talk their way out of trouble or get info from people.
Exactly. Or they might be super perceptive,
Right.
able to read body language and figure out what people are really thinking.
Wow.
And some monks even become masters of stealth and disguise,
Wow.
blending in and gathering information from the shadows.
So they could be the party's diplomats, spies, or even infiltrators.
Totally. And that adaptability is another reason why people like playing monks,
Yeah.
especially if they want a more dynamic and multi-layered way to roleplay.
So we've talked about the monks' strengths, their amazing movement, their fighting skills, and how versatile they are in exploration and social stuff.
Yeah.
But let's get practical. What are some tips for making a monk character that can really do well in a D&D campaign?
Yeah.
Where do you even start?
Well, the article really stresses how important it is to understand the core attributes that make a monk powerful. And like we talked about before, dexterity and wisdom are super important.
Okay.
Dexterity makes their attacks more accurate, helps them dodge, and just makes them more agile in general. Wisdom boosts their armor class through unarmored defense and makes those key abilities like stunning strike even better.
So if you're making a monk,
Yeah,
those two attributes are your top priority. You want to be quick and wise.
exactly. And when it comes to choosing a race for your monk,
Okay.
there are a few that naturally fit this class. Elves, with their bonus to dexterity,
Yeah.
are a popular choice. Halflings can be surprisingly good because they're naturally nimble and good at avoiding attacks.
Right.
And if you want something more unusual, our Kakra, the bird-like humanoids,
Wow.
can really add to the monk's movement with their ability to fly.
So you have options that focus on speed, agility, and even flying. It's like choosing your martial arts style.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a graceful elfic quick halfling or a high-flying Arakocra?
Exactly. It all depends on how you like to play and the kind of character you want to create.
Right.
Once you've picked your race and assigned your ability scores, the next big decision is choosing your monastic tradition.
Okay, let's talk about monastic traditions.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like picking your specialization, your specific area of martial arts mastery.
Exactly. Monastic traditions let you customize your monk even more, giving them unique abilities and shaping how they fight. There's a path for everyone.
Wow.
From the way of the open hand, that's all about controlling crowds,
Yeah.
to the way of shadow, which is all about stealth and being an assassin.
So let's say you want to be the ultimate battlefield controller,
Okay.
the one who can manipulate the fight and decide how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of monastic tradition would you suggest?
For that, the way of the open hand is a classic choice.
Okay.
These monks are masters at manipulating their opponents,
Yeah.
using their kin to push, trip, and knock them down,
Wow.
disrupting enemy formations and giving their allies opportunities.
So they're not just about doing damage. They're turning the battlefield into their own playground, controlling the space and using it to their advantage.
They can deflect attacks, redirect blows, and even use their enemy's own momentum against them.
Okay.
So they're super effective at crowd control and manipulating the battlefield.
But what about players who prefer a more sneaky and quiet approach?
Yeah.
The ones who like to attack from the shadows and disappear.
Then the way of shadow might be better for them.
Okay.
These monks are masters of stealth and trickery. They can melt into the shadows, teleport between dark areas,
Wow.
and launch surprise attacks from unexpected places.
Oh, cool.
They can even create illusions and shrouds of darkness,
Wow.
making them super hard to track and even more dangerous in dim light.
So they're like the ninjas of D&D,
Yeah,
able to move unseen and strike with deadly precision.
exactly. And their abilities make them super versatile. They can be scouts, infiltrators, and even assassins depending on the situation.
So we have a tradition focused on controlling the fight, and another one on stealth and deception.
Right.
What about players who want to combine martial arts with weapons?
Well, for those who want to mix their martial arts skills with weapon mastery, the way of the kensei is a great option.
Okay.
These monks see their weapons as part of themselves, integrating them seamlessly into their fighting style.
So they could be just as deadly with a katana, a bow and arrow,
Yeah.
or even, say, kins?
Exactly. Their training lets them put kin into their weapons,
Wow.
making their attacks better and giving them special abilities.
Cool.
They can make their weapons more accurate, deadlier, and even magically deflect things coming at them.
So they're like those legendary warriors you see in movies who can use any weapon with incredible skill.
Exactly. And they're versatile outside of combat, too.
Oh, right.
They might be skilled craftspeople making their own weapons and giving them a sense of history and purpose. Or they might be wandering swordsmen looking for worthy opponents
Right.
and always honing their skills through challenges.
It sounds like the way of the kensei is a really rich and rewarding way to play,
Yeah.
letting players make characters who are both great fighters and interesting individuals with their own stories and motivations.
Absolutely. And we've only just touched on the monastic traditions available.
Right.
There's the Way of Mercy, which focuses on healing and restorative techniques, turning the monk into a support character who can heal wounds and cure diseases.
Yeah.
And then there's the Way of the Ascendant Dragon, which gives them elemental breath attacks.
Oh, cool.
And the ability to make their strikes stronger with dragon power.
So you could have a monk who breathes fire and uses the power of dragons.
Yeah.
That takes the martial arts idea to a whole new level.
It does. Each tradition has unique abilities and a distinct feel for role-playing.
Right.
So choosing the right monastic tradition
Yeah.
is about finding the path that fits your character's personality and how you want to play the game.
Okay, so we've talked about core attributes, different races that work well with the monk class, and all the monastic traditions that let players specialize. But what about feats? How do those fit into building a good monk?
Feats are a great way to customize your monk even more
Okay.
and either boost their strengths or make up for their weaknesses.
Right.
The article talked about a few feats that are especially good for monks.
So let's say you want to make the monk's movement even better, make them even harder to catch. What feats would you suggest?
Well, the mobile feat is a must-have for any monk who wants to be super fast on the battlefield.
Okay.
It increases their speed, lets them dash through enemies without provoking attacks,
Oh.
and even lets them get out of combat easily.
So they're like lightning,
Yeah,
striking fast and disappearing before the enemy can react.
exactly. And for monks who want to be even more aware of what's going on and predict their opponent's moves, the alert feat is great. It gives them a bonus to initiative, so they're more likely to act first in a fight.
Okay.
It also makes them immune to surprise, so they're always ready,
Wow.
no matter what their enemies try.
So you have a monk who's super mobile and aware, can attack first and disrupt the enemy before they can even plan anything.
Right.
I can see why they're such tough opponents.
They are. And don't forget about feats that make their defenses better.
Yeah.
The tough feat, for example,
Mhm.
can help with their lower hit points,
Oh,
making
yeah.
them a bit tougher and able to handle those big hits.
So you're not just a glass cannon who can only deal damage.
Yeah,
You can also take a hit when you need to.
exactly. It's about finding that balance between attack and defense,
Right.
just like in real martial arts.
Okay.
And remember, choosing feats is all about customization.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding the options that fit your character and how you like to play.
Okay, so we've covered attributes, races, monastic traditions, and feats. What about equipment? What kind of gear would you suggest for a monk?
Well, one of the key things to remember
Yeah.
is that monks don't rely on heavy armor.
Okay.
Actually wearing it would hurt their abilities,
Uh-huh.
slowing them down and limiting their movement.
So no full suits of armor for these guys.
No.
They prefer to use their agility and unarmored defenses?
Exactly. They might wear light armor, like leather,
Okay.
if it doesn't mess with their movement. But a lot of times they'll choose to go without any armor at all,
Why?
relying on their dexterity and wisdom to protect them.
So it's a high risk, high reward style.
Yeah.
You can be super powerful and hard to hit,
Mhm.
but you're also more vulnerable if you make a mistake.
Exactly. And that's why picking the right weapons and tools is important.
Right.
Monks are good with simple weapons like short swords, daggers,
Okay.
staffs, and even clubs.
So it's not just punching and kicking.
Right.
They can use different weapons depending on the situation.
Exactly. And their martial arts feature lets them use their dexterity modifier
Okay.
instead of strength when they attack with these weapons.
So it's not just about brute strength.
Right.
They use their speed and agility to turn simple weapons into really dangerous ones.
Exactly. And don't forget about tools and accessories that can help them move better.
Right.
A grappling hook can help them reach high places or swing across gaps.
Yeah.
Caltrops can slow down enemies chasing them.
Mhm.
And a bag of ball bearings can make the ground slippery,
Wow.
so their opponents can't stand up easily.
So they're resourceful and adaptable, always finding ways to use their surroundings to their advantage.
Exactly. And that resourcefulness also applies to how they use key points.
Okay.
They have to be careful with their key reserves,
Right.
making sure they have enough for those crucial moments.
So it's not just about having a strong character. It's
Right.
about knowing their limits and using their resources wisely.
Exactly. And that's what makes monks so fun to play.
Right.
They make you think differently about combat, be more strategic and clever.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about brute force. It's about finesse strategy and mastering unique skills
Right.
that let them excel in all kinds of situations.
It's like playing a monk is like conducting an orchestra.
Yeah.
You've got all these different instruments, these abilities and resources, and you have to learn to use them all together to create something really beautiful and powerful.
It's a great analogy. You have to find that synergy
Yeah.
between your physical skills, your powers, your equipment,
Right.
and even the environment. You have to understand the flow of combat,
Right.
know when to attack, when to dodge, and when to use those big game-changing abilities.
And it sounds like that mastery goes beyond just fighting.
Yeah.
We've talked about how monks are surprisingly good at exploration and social stuff.
Right.
But I'm interested in the role-playing aspect.
Yeah.
How can players bring their monk characters to life?
Okay.
Beyond just the numbers and dice rolls. What kind of depth can you find in role-playing a monk?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because their philosophy, their training, their whole way of life, it gives you so much to work with for role-playing.
Right.
It's not just about breaking down doors and punching bad guys.
Yeah.
It's about exploring their inner conflicts,
Yeah.
their beliefs, and what they value.
So it's about finding that balance between the physical and the spiritual.
Exactly.
The outer and the inner.
Imagine a monk who's struggling with whether to use violence,
Oh.
even when it seems like the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Maybe they've made a vow not to be violent, or they're trying to find a peaceful way to solve a problem.
Yeah.
That inner struggle can make for some really dramatic moments when you're playing.
It's like that classic hero's dilemma. weighing what's good for everyone
Yeah.
against their own moral code.
Exactly. Or picture a monk who's fighting against their own desires.
Okay.
Maybe they're tempted by wealth or power or even love,
Yeah.
but their training tells them to let go of worldly things.
Right.
That struggle for inner peace can be a really interesting part of their personality.
So they're not just these emotionless warriors. They have desires, they have temptations, they have weaknesses,
Right.
just like anyone else.
Exactly. And those weaknesses make them easier to relate to, more human, even though they're in a fantasy world.
The article talks about a specific example of a monk's backstory
Yeah.
that players can use for inspiration.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Teng Li, the wandering philosopher?
Oh, yeah. Teng Li. He's a great example of how a good backstory can really make a monk character come to life.
Okay.
Teng Li grew up in a remote mountain monastery called the Crimson Lotus Order. They were known for their tough training
Right.
and their focus on achieving enlightenment through physical and mental discipline.
Oh, yeah.
He was amazing at both martial arts and meditation,
No.
but he was also really curious about the world outside the monastery.
So he's not just a warrior. He's a scholar, someone who wants to learn.
Exactly. And the elders of the Crimson Lotus Order saw his desire for knowledge, so they let him go on a pilgrimage,
Wow.
a journey to discover himself, where he could experience the world and broaden his understanding.
So it's a classic hero's journey.
Yeah,
He's going through trials and tribulations, learning and growing as a person.
exactly. And all those experiences shaped him into the wandering philosopher he is now. He's
Right.
still a master of martial arts,
Yeah.
but now he's also wise and compassionate.
Uh-huh.
He understands how important balance and harmony are in everything.
Okay.
The article suggests that he might be a mediator in the party,
Right?
using his diplomacy skills and understanding of balance to find peaceful solutions.
And so he's not just a fighter.
Yeah,
He's a peacemaker, a
Yes.
voice of reason in a world that's often filled with conflict.
exactly. And he might also use his knowledge of meditation and martial arts to help his friends,
Okay.
teaching them techniques for calming their minds, focusing their energy, or even defending themselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
It shows how a good backstory can shape a character's actions and how they interact with others. It makes them feel more real and relatable.
It really does.
It's awesome to see how much depth and richness the monk class has, both in terms of how it works and the role-playing possibilities.
It really is. And I think one of the most important things the article points out
Okay.
is that a monk's journey is never really over.
Right.
They're always trying to improve,
Yeah.
always trying to refine their skills, learn more, and deepen their understanding of themselves and the world.
It's a lifelong quest for balance, both inside and out.
Exactly.
And that journey, that pursuit of self-mastery,
Yeah.
it's something that we can all relate to,
Right.
whether we're playing D&D or dealing with the challenges of real life.
Absolutely. It reminds us that growth and self-discovery never really stop,
Right.
and that facing those challenges is what makes life so meaningful.
Well, this has been a great deep dive into the world of the monk.
Yeah.
We've explored their strengths and weaknesses, talked about strategies, and even their deep philosophical side. A big thanks to LitRPG Reads and Ken Chan for giving us such insightful and engaging content about this really cool D&D class.
They're a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to explore the world of LitRPG and all the possibilities of tabletop role-playing games.
And before we go, we have one last question for you, our listeners.
Okay.
Knowing everything we've learned about the monk's strengths, their limitations,
Yeah.
and all the choices they offer, what kind of epic adventure would you go on with this character?
Would you be a noble warrior fighting for what's right? A clever spy sneaking into enemy territory?
Yeah.
A wise teacher sharing your knowledge? Or maybe something totally different?
Tell us your answers in the comments. We'd love to hear your ideas and see
Yeah.
where your imagination takes you.
Until next time, may your Kim be strong and your rolls be ever in your favor.